Orville sends his compliments to you." "Lord Orville?" repeated I, much amazed. "Yes, Miss, Lord Orville, for I know his lordship now as well as you, and a very civil gentleman he is, for all he's a lord." "For heaven's sake," cried I, "explain yourself." "Why, you must know, Miss, after we left you, we met with a little misfortune; but I don't mind it now, for it's all turned out for the best. But just as we were a-going up Snow Hill, plump we comes against a cart with such a jog it almost pulled the wheel off. However, that ain't the worst, for as I went to open the door in a hurry, a-thinking the coach would be broke down, as ill luck would have it, I never minded that the glass was up, and so I poked my head fairly through it. Only see, Miss, how I've cut my forehead." A much worse accident to himself would not, I believe, at that moment have given me any concern for him. However, he proceeded with his account, for I was too much confounded to interrupt him. "Goodness, Miss, we were in such a stew, us and the servants and all, as you can't think; for besides the glass being broke, the coachman said how the coach wouldn't be safe to go back to Kensington. So we didn't know what to do. However, the footman said they'd go and tell his lordship what had happened. So then father grew quite uneasy like, for fear of his lordship's taking offence, and prejudicing us in our business. So he said I should go this morning and ask his pardon, because of having broken the glass. So then I asked the footman the direction, and they told me he lived in Berkeley Square. So this morning I went, and I soon found out the house." "You did?" cried I, quite out of breath with apprehension. "Yes, Miss, and a very fine house it is. Did you ever see it?" "No." "No! Why then, Miss, I know more of his lordship than you do, for all you knew him first. So, when I came to the door, I was in a peck of troubles, a-thinking what I should say to him. However, the servants had no mind I should see him, for they told me he was busy, but I might leave my message. So I was just a-coming away, when I bethought myself to say I came from you." "From me?" "Yes, Miss, for you know, why should I have such a long walk as that for nothing? So I says to the porter, says I, tell his lordship, says I, one wants to speak to him as come from one Miss Anville, says I." "Good God!" cried I, "and by what authority did you take such a liberty?" "Goodness, Miss, don't be in such a hurry, for you'll be as glad as me when you hear how well it turned out. So then they made way for me, and said his lordship would see me directly. And there I was, led through such a heap of servants, and so many rooms, that my heart quite misgave me; for I thought, thinks I, he'll be so proud, he'll hardly let me speak. But he's no more proud than I am, and he was as civil as if I'd been a lord myself. So then I said I hoped he wouldn't take it amiss about the glass, for it was quite an accident, but he bid me not mention it, for it did not signify. And then he said he hoped you got safe home, and wasn't frightened. So I said yes, and I gave your duty to him." "My duty to him!" exclaimed I; "and who gave you leave? Who desired you?" "Oh, I did it out of my own head, just to make him think I came from you. But I should have told you before, how the footman said he was going out of town to-morrow evening, and that his sister was soon to be married, and that he was ordering a heap of things for that. So it came into my head, as he was so affable, that I'd ask him for his custom. So I says I, my lord, says I, if your lordship been engaged particularly, my father is a silversmith, and he'll be very proud to serve you, says I, and Miss Anville, as danced with you, is his cousin, and she's my cousin too, and she'd be very much obligated to you, I'm sure." "You'll drive me wild," cried I, starting from my seat; "you have done me an irreparable injury, but I will hear no more." And then I ran into my own room. I was half frantic, I really raved. The good opinion of Lord Orville seemed now irretrievably lost. A faint hope, which in the morning I had vainly encouraged, that I might see him again, and explain the transaction, wholly vanished, now I found he was so soon to leave town; and I could not but conclude, that for the rest of my life he would regard me as an object of utter contempt. The very idea was a dagger to my heart. I could not support it, and but I blush to proceed, I fear your disapprobation; yet I should not be conscious of having merited it, but that the repugnance I feel to relate to you what I have done, makes me suspect I must have erred. Will you forgive me if I own that I first wrote an account of this transaction to Miss Mirvan, and that I even thought of concealing it from you? Short-lived, however, was the ungrateful idea, and sooner will I risk the justice of your displeasure than unworthily betray your generous confidence. You are now probably prepared for what follows, which is a letter, a hasty letter, that in the height of my agitation I wrote to Lord Orville. My Lord, I am so infinitely ashamed of the application made yesterday for your Lordship's carriage in my name, and so greatly shocked at hearing how much it was injured, that I cannot forbear writing a few lines, to clear myself from the imputation of an impertinence which I blush to be suspected of, and to acquaint you that the request for your carriage was made against my consent, and the visit with which you were importuned this morning without my knowledge. I am inexpressibly concerned at having been the instrument, however innocently, of so much trouble to your Lordship; but I beg you to believe that the reading these lines is the only part of it which I have given voluntarily. I am, my Lord, your Lordship's most humble servant, Evelina Anville. I applied to the maid of the house to get this note conveyed to Berkeley Square; but scarce had I parted with it, before I regretted having written it at all, and I was flying down stairs to recover it, when the voice of Sir Clement Willoughby stopped me. As Madame Duval had ordered we should be denied to him, I was obliged to return up stairs; and after he was gone, my application was too late, as the maid had given it to a porter. My time did not pass very serenely while he was gone. However, he brought me no answer, but that Lord Orville was not at home. Whether or not he will take the trouble to send any, or whether he will condescend to call, or whether the affair will rest as it is, I know not; but, in being ignorant, am most cruelly anxious. Letter 54.